Recording in progress.
Welcome to the Worcester School Committee. If you can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Kathy is on, yes. Well, she's on, but she's on the seat. There she comes.
Okay, roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Here.
Member Benenda,
Here.
Member Guardiola,
Here.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Here.
Member Mailman,
Here.
Member McCullough,
Here.
Member Roy,
Here.
Mayor Petty.
Here. So we have E, the consent agenda. We'll take that collectively, minus the, we're going to hold the last item, which is to accept the donation from the George Alden Trust in the amount of $2.5 million to the reconstruction of the tech clinic at Worcester Technical High School. So take those collectively. We'll hold that until 11:21. Okay. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. We are going down to I, public comment. Any member may speak, address the committee regarding any item before the committee for up to 2 minutes. So just give your name, see your residence, and item number.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn Doyle. I live in Worcester. I am a representative of the School Site Council for the La Familia Chandler Magnet Merge Schools, and I'm going to read a letter that we wrote. We are writing today to support the administration's recommendation to name our school Nuestra Dual Language Magnet. Based on the survey data on preferences and on the feedback we heard at the LEI community meeting, we believe that of the 3 options presented, Nuestra Dual Language Magnet is the best fit. It most embodies the legacy of Worcester's bilingual programs, most encapsulates the core values of the school, and best unites our merged school communities as we look to the future. Nuestra literally translates to our, but it's much more than that. It is a word that unites a group of people who join together in one core value and goal. We are Nuestra Dual, a school which belongs to a bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural legacy. The bilingual program is not simply a curriculum, but the result of a long history of advocacy. Transitional bilingual education and dual language programs exist because decades ago, parents, teachers, and the community fought for them. They believe deeply in the power of multilingualism and inclusion, and we stand on the shoulders of those who began this work before us. We can never take bilingual education for granted. It is with that context we recognize that our school is built on this important legacy. This is nuestra herencia, our inheritance. We believe our school name should be imbued with that meaning. For the last 18 months, school leaders and educators have worked hard to bring together our two school communities. It may seem like a simple thing that putting people in the same building will make it a school, but a school culture and a sense of belonging is not something that happens so easily. While we celebrate the positive aspects of the merger, we have also had to work through the grief of what we lost. To move forward and focus on this next chapter, for nuestra comunidad, our community, we believe it is in our best interest to have an entirely new name. Our children exemplify the core values of our school: diversity, resilience, innovation, and community. They understand more than any of us how to have compassion and empathy, how to be honest and have integrity, and how to persevere. They are nuestro futuro, our future. Above all else, we respect and value our children's choice of nuestra dual language magnet, and we hope you do too. Pa'lante vamos.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak tonight? What? You want to speak? Yes. Oh, right here, okay.
Ann Bureau, Worcester, Mass. I know I'm here every month. Just want to thank the superintendent. She met with our Latinas Unidas in Action group of over 30 parent leaders, and it meant the world to them. They couldn't be here tonight, but they were thrilled. And they had a whole list of questions that she and Deborah Gonzalez went down point by point. And then we're so grateful of this administration. They also arranged to, after school care is one of the top needs of parents, they arranged a meeting with their top leaders, with after-school providers, to try to figure out how to work together to get more after-school programs. We're really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Just your name and city of residence.
State your name, Rosemary.
Rosemary Lopez, and from Worcester.
Yep, perfect.
I'll speak on her behalf. We are here to speak against Dr. Rachel Monares regarding concerns that we have with the Worcester Public Schools, specifically the Special Education Department. Last year, the school failed to service her son, and we tried to communicate with the school system. They were very dismissive. We follow every protocol, and we also spoke with the quadrant manager, the principal. We follow every single protocol. We finally spoke with the assistant principal. Again, it was dismissive. We tried to get an appointment with Rachel Monares. She refused to see us, would not return our phone calls. And at this point, her son is at the 3rd grade level in reading and writing, and he's in 6th grade. That's because the special education department failed to provide the services that he was entitled to. Right now, we are working with the Massachusetts Department of Education, and we reported everything. We have documentation to state everything that's going on with this particular case. And the school, the Massachusetts Department of Education, found them at fault in 3 areas out of 4 areas. We had a meeting today. It was very unsuccessful. Again, they were very dismissive. They tried to trying to disregard all our concerns, and they would not acknowledge that the Massachusetts Department of Education found them at fault in 3 areas out of 4.
Okay, thank you. What I can do is have Christy take your name and number. I'll give you a call.
Thank
okay?
you.
Can you get the name and number? Okay, we have somebody online, I believe. Oh, no? Is she there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, this your name and city of residence and item number?
It's Dina Tedeschi, and I'm a resident of Worcester. And there isn't a specific item, but I wanted to personally invite all of the elected officials here tonight and within our community and our community as a whole to an event that's happening at the Worcester Common Saturday in response to National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's going to be at the Worcester Common this Saturday, October 12th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to help raise awareness and break the silence of domestic violence. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is in partnership with STAT, which is Survivors Taking Action Together, which is part of a group under the Worcester Community Connections Coalition, or WCCC, and that's also in partnership with the YWCA. It's free and open to the public, and it's an event. Join us for the walk, for the rally, for tabling, some of it, all of it, whatever you would like to do. Just continue to raise awareness about it. And a lot of people, no one wants to talk about this silent killer that's happening in our community. We may think that it's not happening to someone we know, but it is. 1 in 4 women and girls will be affected by domestic violence in their lifetime. It's important that we continue to raise awareness to break this silence. And if you want to know more, to support in other ways, you can contact Ann Bureau, and I know she was there this evening earlier. Her information is available at the U-Inc. 7 Hills website. So just want to take a moment to invite everyone here to be part of this really important awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's everybody. I'll move on from this part. Next, we have a public petition, which is regard this naming of the Chandler Magnet Elementary School to the Betty Price Magnet Elementary School. So we'll take that along with, reminds us to take the item that's on the general agenda, which is consider changing the name of Chandler Magnet La Familia School to La Familia Chandler Multicultural School. So that's, is that right? School member Jermaine?
Thank you. To the chair, just in regards to the public petition, I just want to make a motion to file that petition just due to the fact that it's asking that we move forward with naming it the Elizabeth L. Betty Price Magnet Elementary School. We're going to make another decision and vote on that school tonight. Sure. So my motion will be to file that. I do just want to say, in speaking with Mr. Coughlin in regards to this, you know, for many that probably didn't grow up in Worcester and don't know Miss Price, she was a stout supporter here in the city of Worcester, was a civil rights leader here in Worcester. I had the privilege of growing up with her and her family and attending Second Baptist Church with Reverend Thurman Hargrove, who grew up here, and they really fought for us African Americans coming from the South here in Worcester and establishing ourselves here in this community. And then also her ability to fight through the things that were going on here in the city to push through and become a member of the Worcester School Committee as a black woman back in the 70s is something that you would never have heard of. So working with Mr. Coughlin moving forward, I think that this is definitely an important item that we should look at naming something in regards to somewhere in the Worcester Public Schools in the history of Mrs. Price and her family and the work that she's done here. So I'll be working with Mr. Coughlin on that, on coming up with something to represent her as her stout, iconic figure here in Worcester moving forward. But the motion is to file this petition. Thank you.
The motion to file. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. So we'll go to the item regarding the naming of the school. We have 3 names that have been put forth: La Familia Chandler Magnet School, and Worcester Dual Language Magnet School, and Worcester Dual Language Magnet School. Yeah. I don't know if they want to wait. I figure we'll do it now since they're here. Member McCullough? You want to speak first? Superintendent?
Through the chair. So the naming or the renaming of Chandler Magnet La Familia has been quite a process, almost like giving birth a second time, maybe a third time, for everybody involved. And as was shared by the parents, but also in the various subcommittee meetings regarding this, there has been a few different surveys that had been administered since the start of this school year. And so the backup shows the different surveys for people to look at. And so I'm referring to GB 456, 4-56. Just want to make sure everyone knows what we're looking at. So the first survey, after it returning back from the FOG back to administration, and I do want to commend the Chandler La Familia School, the naming committee that did a lot of work starting last school year, for everything that you've done. You put a lot of time and energy and passion into the work, so I don't want that to go disregarded. It was brought to FOG early in this school year and returned back to administration to get more feedback from the community. Actually, I think it was brought last school year, and I think about it towards the end of the year, if I remember correctly now, to get more feedback from the community. And so we engaged with the Latino Education Institute to help us to gather more feedback so that it would be a neutral party, bringing back what the community on a broader scale would like to see for the renaming of this school. And so we received that information, and then we brought it back to the to administration, and we administered our first survey this school year to find out from whomever chose to vote. So it was open to internal community as well as external, because all of our schools reflect not just who attends it, but those who have attended it in the past. And we were looking for where people were with the initial name that came out of the first process that the naming committee had done, and we received some parameters. So there was a direction to let's rename the school, and the parameters that were received, so that's part of the first survey that was administered for a week, finished on September 14th. The parameters are things such as, I want to just read them off. The name should translate easily, both English and Spanish. 53.85% of the participants said that was important. The name should have meaning and align with the core values. 49.45% said that was important. And then there was a variety of different, should it have dual language, multilingual, multicultural? The top of that, 46.15% said it should include dual language. So those set some parameters in place and helped to guide some names. Oh, and on that survey, we also asked, what's a name that you would recommend? And that was open response, so anyone could respond to that. And so we received quite a bit of names, brought the parameters back as well as the names back to FOG. FOG, which stands for Finance, Operation, and Governance Subcommittee, selected 3 names and said, now go back to the community, again, internal and external, and make a vote as to which of those 3 names are your preference. We had people make a selection, their first preference, their second preference, their third preference, so that we can get a broad feel of what came out. And we also asked in that survey to tell us what are they representing in terms of the different groups, right? So classrooms, every classroom had the opportunity to vote as a classroom, not individuals in that classroom. Not every classroom chose to, or I shouldn't say chose, not every classroom voted the second time. They had a week to do that. Some didn't get that done, but they had that opportunity. So classroom, staff members, school family members, so parents, guardians, whomever, as they self-identified, and then community members. Every survey was given for a week. So we got the data back. And the data shows, in all honesty, a very divided group of individuals. And I know that makes it hard for everybody, because there are so many emotions. Identity is attached to this. So the data shows, and this is all in the backup, but I will read it. For La Familia Chandler Magnet School, 192 people said they wanted that was their first choice. For Nuestra Dual Language Magnet School, 94 people said that. And then if you look at Worcester Dual Language Magnet School, 195. So you could hear very close, it's 3 votes, between Worcester Dual Language and La Familia Magnet School. Nuestra came in the last if we go with the straight vote. My recommendation doesn't necessarily match just going with the straight vote, but I want to explain why. And I put this in the backup also. Because there is a clear divide that is so close in nature, we're talking 3 votes. This is a school that is two schools coming together, and I wouldn't want the school to get fractured over the name. The name is actually meant to pull them together. That's why they are doing this. And so I looked at, well, what did the data show us again? We had 2 surveys. What else did what was the first survey? Why did we do that? Data is important. I, as your superintendent, keep saying we have to use data in decision making. What else does the data say? And so I went back to the parameters again, because that's what we started with. And the parameters clearly stated that they want the new name should reflect the core values and mission of the school, and that it should be a name that brings them together. It's a brand new name. Actually, 77.7% of the individuals in the first survey said, make it a brand new name. So I looked at what the parameters said. 77.7% said, make it a new name. Make sure the name is representing the core vision and values of the school. Dual language was important to have in the name. And when I drilled down on the second survey, which was really, you had the 3 names, you had to choose from it. The only name that actually received at least 60% of the total votes was Nuestra. And that was actually the children who said that. Those were the classrooms. And so, because there's varying thoughts from the adults, but the children are saying, Nuestra is who we are, because it's our school, our dual language school, and it meets the parameters of the survey. That's where the recommendation is from administration. Now, I clearly know, and I don't want to put the committee in any difficult place. My responsibility is to give a recommendation. You are the ultimate authority in this, and you have more to think about than I do, but I did want to make sure that you understood the recommendation, where it's coming from, and the why behind that. And so the recommendation is Nuestra Dual Language Magnet School. Thank you.
Thank you. Member McCullough.
Thank you. I really appreciate that the work that the administration and the families have put in on this, and the community and the school community, as well as the school committee. Knowing that namings can be one of the most challenging topics for an elected body, particularly in this case where it is an actual school building being renamed, not a brand new school being named, and 2 school communities coming together, and certainly during very challenging times when La Familia students had been moved from Roosevelt to then La Familia, and then unexpectedly we had to close La Familia and blend 2 school communities together. There was a lot to consider there in trying to bring these communities together. And while this process has been unique in some ways, there is a shared interest by the committee, the administration, and the school community to move forward with a new name. And we heard, overwhelmingly the biggest thing was 0.7% of families wanted a completely new name, or I should say respondents to the survey. And in order for this to be a blended community, to have identity of its own, because we know how important it is for them to have their own identity. The voices of many community members have been heard and considered throughout this process, and how we have come to a place of this final survey with the final 3 name choices being put forward by FOG. And when we put those forward, we did ask that the survey be done, and then we would take those survey results and utilize the results of those survey to put forward the final choice in a motion. And I'd really like to thank the PTO and the principal, the site council, and the families and the students at La Familia Chandler Magnet Blended School, the superintendent and her team, along with the educators and stakeholders at large, because we did hear from people outside of survey results and meetings and conversations, and we're really trying to be thoughtful for everyone's feedback that we did receive, for all of their participation throughout the process. And I absolutely appreciate the administration's recommendation of Nuestra. It was actually a choice that I really did like as well. Based on the survey data and based on the fact that the motion that we made was to utilize the survey data, my motion is going to be to use those results to move forward with Worcester Dual Language Magnet School and put that to the vote of the committee. When we look at the survey results, it's an option that had the most first and second place votes, with 375 votes to 239 first and second place votes for Nuestra. So when we're looking at this and we say we're going to base it on the survey data, it's very hard to not utilize that data, even though I understand the rationale of administration's recommendation around Nuestra being something that is meaningful. It is not to take away from that, but what we said was that we would use the survey data to make the decision, and it is a completely new name. Additionally, when we look at longevity for the district, it's a name that can work highlighting dual language, and if something were to change and additional languages were added, it would not just be a Spanish name. However, it's also consistent with the similar magnet program that we have in the district. So again, I'd really like to thank everyone who was a part of this process, and I really look forward to the school community being able to move forward together.
Member Guardiola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I appreciate the comments from the Site Council and the PTO, as well as the administration's recommendation, there was a lot of work and effort from the community and my colleagues on FOG and the surveyors and those who took the survey and those who gathered the information. But there was a democratic process here that should be respected and honored. I was happy with all three choices, and I appreciated that it went to the open to the public for comment and for vote. But I was to be inclined to support the highest vote getter as well. And I thank all who were involved in the process, but I think there was a lot of work done, and I think you have to go, or I would be voting on what the highest vote getter was. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Mailman.
Thank you, Chair. I actually want to support the administration. At one point, I think it was after the first time that the suggestions came on and we knew that we were going to take a look at it again. I thought, okay, Worcester dual language, nobody, it's generic, it's whatever, let's just do that. But when I went to that meeting at Worcester State, and when I read the letter and I read the comments about what kind of school is this? This is a dual language school. It is going to be Spanish for the foreseeable future. Awesome if we can add other languages down the road, but that is by far our largest language. And I think that I was pleased that the administration colored outside the lines a little bit, because the survey to me was a Facebook survey that anybody, it wasn't like I don't know who the big survey companies in the world are that do these very fair things and we make sure everybody does it. Anybody could have responded. My cousins went to Chandler Magnet. I think the whole family called in and said this is what they wanted. They went to the junior high school. I'm glad everybody did a bunch of surveys, but I think the spirit of what was trying to be created here is reflected by Nuestra, and I will try hard to roll my R's and figure out how to say that properly, but if that is afforded, I think that a couple of other things. I know that there are people at Chandler that were part of the Chandler Mag original group that think, let's just keep it Chandler Magnet. Why are we changing it at all? And I think that's part of the division that the superintendent mentioned. And I think that that's like a really unfortunate thing for a very important program that we're trying to start off. And I just think that while I would have thought it was the name that made sense, I now feel like if we don't utilize a Spanish word in that name, that we're not doing the whole idea of this dual language program justice. So I would support the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing nobody else, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, going through the process. I want to thank the administration for running with the process, along with the school and the PTO and the families at the magnet school. I want to thank FOG for doing the work they did, and I know personally I'm not a big fan of changing any name of an existing school, but this was different in this case where we're merging two schools. I know in the past people have asked to change the names of school, and we haven't done it. But this was different. We wanted to combine two schools, so I think that was fair. And there was a process in place, so we're going to take a vote. And the vote is to, from Member McCullough, is the Worcester Do Language Magnet School is the vote. So a yes would be a yes, and a no would be a no. Okay. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
No.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll go back to the regular agenda. Member McCullough?
In the interest of moving forward so the school community can move forward with the name, can we do the reconsideration vote, to vote for
Okay.
reconsideration?
Okay, sure. So the first motion would be to allow us to take the reconsideration, so roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes, so reconsideration, roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
No.
Member Benenda,
No.
Member Guardiola,
No.
Vice Chair Johnson,
No.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
No.
Member Roy,
No.
Mayor Petty.
No. Okay. Next up, we have reported the superintendent, From Here to Anywhere Together, Student Academic Achievement, Part 1. Dr. Rachel Monterez.
Thank you through the chair as Drs. Morse and Andrade come up front. Oh, and Andrew's with us too. Thank you, Andrew. Tonight you're going to hear our part one of two-part student achievement data. Pull that presentation up as well. Next time, so this data will be an overview on the accountability system, how we did with the accountability, overview on MCAS, and then looking at MCAS and the various student groups that we said as a district we're going to be sure that we're keeping our eye on. So the next slide is just a reminder to the committee that everything that we do moving forward in Worcester Public Schools is connected to our strategic plan, our promise for our future. And from there, the goals for the superintendent that this committee approved last month. So the next slide, I'll be bringing back the goals each time. So this presentation is linked to two goals in particular. The student goal of making sure that we are a learning community that defines, refines, and implements, and then monitors the culturally responsive policies. Monitors the cultural responsive policies and practices that acknowledge the diverse backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges that our youth, our staff, and our caregivers have in Worcester Public Schools. So that's one of the two goals that this is connected to. And then the next slide is the closest connection, honestly, because this is around collaboratively nurture and model a culture where staff are reflective with their practices and disaggregate the student data. So tonight you will see the student data disaggregated. I want to remind the committee that we have had a historical discrepancy between student groups in Worcester Public Schools, and specifically how our Latino youth perform, how our multilingual, and our special education. 47% of the student population in Worcester identifies as Latino. as those children succeed, our district succeeds. And so ensuring, monitoring, and making the necessary adjustments so that that discrepancy starts to decrease must be our work. A third of our children are considered multilingual children, and 22% are special education. So again, paying attention to how those children are learning and adjusting instructional practices must happen in the classroom on a regular basis. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Morris, and they will lead you through. We understand it appears to be a really long presentation, but it's what our district is about. It's how our children are performing. So we ask that you are patient with us. Thank you.
Good evening, and through the chair, I'd like to introduce my colleagues. Dr. Marco Andre to my right, and further to his right is Dr. Andrew Lampy. And the three of us will be presenting the report of the superintendent tonight. So over the course of the evening, we're going to set some context around where the country is, where the Worcester Public Schools is. We're going to share information about the accountability and some summaries of student results on MCAS. So could we go to the next slide, please? So here's a slide in the title here, why are our kids still struggling in school 4 years after the pandemic? And there have been multiple news articles about the idea that the recovery from the pandemic has been much slower than we thought. And as you know, the performance across the country has been flatlined, and our most recent administration in Worcester shows that we are trending like the rest of the nation. We also know there is no quick fix. There's nothing we can buy. There's not a tool that can ensure and guarantee that we'll be on the road to success as quickly as we'd like to. What we do know is that we believe by putting structures, systems, and evidence-based practices into play, that is our best next step to meeting the goals that we have set for ourselves to recover from this pandemic. So could we go to the next slide, please? So we thought this quote was great. This came from the Education Secretary, Patrick Tutwiler, and I will read it. Change in education is a process, not an event. As the MCAS results show today, the road back from the pandemic is not short. So to that point, we understand that the hard work begins with building systems and structures. So in the Worcester Public Schools, there are 5 key areas that we're focusing on. The first area that we're focusing on is sense of belonging. We understand that by creating a strong, emotionally safe, and supportive climate for learning is a must. We also know the coherence means that good teaching and grade level appropriate instruction across the system is also a must. And as far as consistency goes, we understand that good instruction day after day, week after week, month after month, will build the stamina we need to be able to address some of these gaps in our outcomes. Multi-year access to high-quality instruction is one thing that has been shown in the data and in research to overcome educational deficits and gaps. So we are working very hard in Worcester to address the need to have high-quality instruction for every student, every day, every school. And we have lots of tools that we'll share with you at the end of the presentation to describe and explain a little bit more about that. But one key lever for us is data literacy. We understand that people are working very, very, very hard to try to address the multiple issues and challenges that they face in the classrooms. But we understand that looking at data in a unique and different way and ensuring that all schools have the same access to the same materials, resources, and ideas about what good data literacy entails will be critical for our next steps forward. So at this point, I'm going to turn the rest of the middle of the presentation over to Dr. Andre.
Thank you. Through the chair. Before reviewing the accountability results, we'd like to review the MCAS test and accountability system timeline. If you look in the slide, you'll notice at the top that through 2016, MCAS 1.0, or the legacy test as we called it, through 2016, MCAS 1.0, or what we call the legacy test, was used. Starting in 2017, we see the introduction of MCAS 2.0, or Next Generation MCAS. It was administered to students in grades 3 through 8 for ELA and math. The legacy test was still being administered for science in grades 5 and 8 and high school, and the high school ELA and math tests were still the legacy test. Same was true in 2018. By 2019, all but the high school science was next gen. Then, because of the pandemic, we stopped testing. Even when it returned in 2021, there was low participation because not all students had returned to the in-person instruction. Over the past 3 years, we've had stability and no interruptions in using the MCAS Next Gen tests. The accountability system, which feeds largely off the MCAS, has been more of a moving target over the same time frame. This is at the bottom. If you look over time, you'll notice that accountability started out with a level system and switched in 2018 to the system we are currently more familiar with. The new accountability system added a second consistent year in 2019 before it was put on hold for 2 years due to the pandemic. When the accountability system started up again in 2022, it was called Accountability Lite, and no determinations were made about schools using the data. In 23, a new baseline was set, and the way the system was run was most similar to what we had in 2019 for that 1 year. Now, in 2024, we have a system that has new aspects to it that were not in place last year or at any point since 2018. DESE has told districts to use caution when comparing any of the school percentiles from any of the years from 2018 through 2024. This context is important to know that some of the 24 accountability results are not, let's say, apples to apples comparison to 23 in any prior year. So there's just some context about the MCAS and accountability system over the past few years. Before showing results, I want to recap the accountability system. This slide reflects the district's performance in meeting targets set in 2024. It is not a comparison to other districts, and we do not receive an accountability percentile ranking us against other districts. What you'll see is 2 columns of non-high school grades, which are grades 3 through 8. That's elementary and middle school. You'll also see a high school grades column. Those are high schools. On the left-hand side, the color-coded indicators. Those are performance, accountability performance indicators. You'll see achievement, growth, high school completion, progress toward attaining English language proficiency, and additional indicators. The system uses a 3-to-1 ratio of achievement to growth. It's clear when you look at it for non-high school, achievement and growth is 60% to 20%. For the high schools, it's important to note that the high school completion, which is in the middle, it's the orange bucket, that 20% is tagged on to the achievement. So at the elementary level, not middle school level, not all these indicators apply. That's why there's an NA, but you'll see the weights for the high schools, which also have the high school completion and additional indicators. Now, looking at this summary, if we met the targets of 24 for a particular accountability indicator, it's seen with a check mark. If we improved from 23 to 24 but did not meet the target, then you'll see a green arrow. Overall, for the district, we met 46% of our targets compared to 41% in 23. Our high schools met 4 targets and increased in 3 others. Our elementary and middle schools improved in math but did not meet any other targets in 24. You will see some data that will be presented by Dr. Lampe that will reflect the results of this accountability summary. First, we're going to be now sharing some information about the MCAS. It'll be ELA, math, and science. Across Massachusetts schools, ELA performance was down from school year 23 to school year 24 across all grade levels. For students in grades 3 through 8 and many groups, there are double-digit deficits in achievement when compared to 2019. In Worcester, our ELA results for grades 3 through 8 mirror the state. Compared to most other urban districts, we have higher percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations. Our high school students improved compared to the state. And at this time, I'll be turning it over to Dr. Lampe.
Thank you, through the chair. Okay, so before we jump in, I'm just going to quickly orient you to how you'll see the data we're presenting. Across all the figures today, Worcester will be represented in gold, the state will be in gray, and other districts will be in blue. And we've added statements at the bottom for context, but I'll primarily focus on the materials and the figures. So what you're looking at here and how we'll kick off each of the 3 areas is the average scaled score for non-high school and high school broken down by year. And we start by showing scaled scores, since this measure is a bit more precise in showing how things are changing for all students who took the MCAS, rather than looking at just one particular group of students. And we show 2019 to demonstrate pre-pandemic performance, and then every year of MCAS since 2022. And as you can see, Worcester follows the same changes as the state, and the difference between Worcester and the state remains stable over time. But you'll note, though, that a number of schools in Worcester had change from SY23 to SY24 that was greater than that of the state, and we've called out some of those schools at the bottom. Now we're switching to thinking about the percentage of students who were meeting or exceeding expectations on MCAS ELA in Worcester and in other large urban districts in Massachusetts. And as you can see, Worcester is among the top in terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations in both non-high school and in high school. And just for clarity, this figure only shows data for SY24. And now we transition to specifically looking at the percentage of students from different subgroups who met or exceeded expectations both before the pandemic and in the past few years. And in this slide, we're looking at the percentage of Black and African American students in Worcester, who are again represented in gold, and in Massachusetts, who are represented in gray. And as you can see, the percentage of Black and African American students who met or exceeded expectations was the same as the state for both non-high school and in high school. And again, we call out schools with the highest percentages at the bottom of the slide. Next, we transition to showing the percentage of Hispanic and Latino students who met or exceeded expectations. As is the case generally, WPS follows similar patterns to the state over time, just with a smaller percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations. One exception is that WPS had a 1 percentage point increase for Hispanic and Latino high schoolers relative to last year, while the state remained stable. And we had several schools in the district where the percentage of Hispanic or Latino students who met or exceeded expectations actually exceeded the state's average percentage. The next subgroup is English language learners, where groups of students meeting or exceeding expectations are generally low, but this is not surprising given that these are the students for whom the English language is not fully accessible. And you can see that generally we follow the state in both non-high school and in high school, typically trailing only by 1 or 2 percentage points. Next, we show the percentage of students with disabilities who met or exceeded expectations. In elementary and in middle school, the gap between WPS and the state has shrunk since the pandemic and then has remained largely stable since 2022, while in high school, the difference has remained quite stable over time regardless. And now this slide and the next show the rates of meeting or exceeding expectations for male and female WPS students compared to the state. Note that our purpose for showing these is to illustrate that the pattern between WPS and the state is the same for students of both gender identities. And you can see that in general here, WPS follows the same patterns as the state for male students, though the gap did shrink slightly in high school this past year. And you can see here with the results for female students the same story. There's a decrease in performance for non-high school students, while the gap between WPS and the state shrinks at the high school level in the past year. And here the only real difference is that female students tend to perform better on the MCAS ELA exam at both levels, which is a trend with substantial empirical evidence and one that occurs statewide.
So now we're going to transition to MCAS Math. Math improved statewide for grade 3, but was flat in most grades. Worcester was in line with the state except for our high school results from school year 23 to school year 24. I'll be turning it back to Dr. Lampe to go through the slides for our math performance.
So here again, we're starting by showing the average scaled score on the assessment in WPS and in Massachusetts over time. And you can see that these lines remain pretty consistently parallel to one another, which shows that while the difference between WPS and the state remains, Worcester follows the same ups and downs that the state does from year to year. The next slide, you can see that the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations for Worcester and for comparable urban districts in SY24. And particularly, you'll note for high schools, we're the 4th highest, and for non-high schools, and then for high school, we're the 3rd highest, and in both cases, Boston and Lowell are typically the biggest standouts. But also note that more than half of all of our schools had rates of students meeting or exceeding expectations that were higher than the average rate for all other urban districts listed. Next, to dive back into the subgroups, you can see that Black and African American students in Worcester meet or exceed expectations at a rate that exceeds the state's for elementary and middle school, and that's been the case since the pandemic. While in high school, there is a bit of a gap between Worcester and the state, but that's been present since before the pandemic, and it actually shrunk by 2 percentage points in SY24. Next, for Hispanic and Latino students, the gap for non-high school students is smaller in SY24 than it was pre-pandemic, but it remains the same at the high school level. Now again, transitioning to look at the rates of meeting or exceeding expectations for English language learners. In general, the story here is much the same as with ELA, where EL students tend to meet or exceed expectations at lower rates than non-EL students. But you'll note the gap between Worcester and the state is again quite small, typically only a couple of percentage points. This slide now shows the percentage of students with disabilities who met or exceeded expectations. And in elementary and middle school, the rates remain very stable for both the state and for WPS, while there's a bit more fluctuation in high school. But the difference between WPS and the state at the high school level shrunk by 3 percentage points relative to SY23. And again, to close out math, the next two slides will show the rates for male and female students. And again, they show that the patterns between Worcester and the state remain the same for both groups. For male students in particular, the rates of meeting or exceeding expectations are higher than for ELA, which again follows state and national trends. And you can see that patterns across follow from before the pandemic through to the present day. And here you can see that the difference between WPS and the state really does not matter whether students are male or female. Notably, the difference between WPS and the state for female students also follows from before the pandemic and again remains quite stable over time.
Okay, thank you. And the final section of MCAS results that we'll be sharing are for MCAS Science. Science was improved statewide in grades 5 and 10, but lower in grade 8. Science performance in grades 5 and 8 declines to the state for us as a district, but high school improved by 4 points, and there was improvement across all subgroups.
So again, to kick off science, you're seeing the average scaled score for the MCAS Science subject area. For non-high schoolers, as Dr. Andre just said, WPS decreased by about 3 scaled score points relative to SY23, while the state remained stable. That said, more than 40% of the elementary or middle schools experienced positive growth from SY23 that exceeded that of the state's average growth over the same time. And you'll see that for high school, WPS's average scaled score increased by 4 points relative to SY23, while the state increased by 1, indicating that the gap between the two shrunk notably. Here we see that in comparison to like urban districts, WPS falls in among its peers in terms of the percentage of students who met or exceeded expectations for non-high schools. And for non-high schools, most districts tended to fall in the high teens or low 20s in terms of percentages, and Worcester was the same. At the high school level, though, Worcester was again third, with both Boston and Lowell making the other two highest urban districts. And this follows with the pattern we saw on the previous slide, where WPS made gains in terms of average scaled score for high school science. Turning to our subgroups, as you can see for Black and African American students, the rates of students meeting or exceeding expectations are just about the same for WPS and the state in elementary and in middle school, only really fluctuating by a few percentage points from year to year. In high school, though, while the difference between the district and the state was 7 percentage points in SY23, this year WPS was actually 1 percentage point higher than the state. And you can see that the percentage of Black and African American students who met or exceeded expectations increased by 10 percentage points compared to SY23. For Hispanic and Latino students, the story largely reflects that of the district as a whole. The difference between WPS and the state increased relative to SY23 for elementary and middle school students, but is still smaller than it was prior to the pandemic. At the high school level, the difference has shrunk substantially, however, by 3 percentage points. For EL students, the story regarding science performance mirrors that of ELA and math. The difference between Worcester and the state is not very large, as both have small percentages of students who met or exceeded expectations compared to other groups. But notably, a few elementary schools had substantially larger proportions of EL students who met or exceeded expectations compared to that of the rest of the state. For students with disabilities, we see that the pattern has largely remained unchanged since before the pandemic for non-high school students. And the same is true at the high school level, where the difference between the state and WPS has remained relatively stable over the past 3 years. And finally, this slide and the next show the breakdown for male and female students, where again the patterns between WPS and the state do not differ based on students' gender identity. For both non-high school and high school, the percentage of male students meeting or exceeding expectations reflects the pattern seen in previous slides. The percentage of elementary and middle school males who met or exceeded expectations dropped slightly in the district, but increased by several percentage points in high school. And finally, we see a similar pattern reflected for female students as well. There are slight decreases in elementary and middle schools and a 7 percentage point increase for high school students.
So I'm going to speak to you a bit about the glimmers of possibilities and acceleration. And we're going to start with some of the work that went into last year's teaching and learning initiatives. So we'll start with the SPARK plan. As you all know, we're a future-ready district, and we're working very hard to infuse instruction with some technology-enhanced and future-ready instruction, and we refer to that as our SPARK plan. So we have innovative teaching practices guides. We have Walwickis Elementary School, which is our school where we're beginning to try and test out a lot of these different practices. And in addition to that, we have a SPARK teaching coaching plan. So we then went to look at our coaches, and we said, we look at our coaches as our force multipliers, and we wanted to reset the Coaches Academy to make sure that our coaches had all the tools, all the information, and all of the resources that they would need to assist their teachers in their buildings with what they would need to get us to our desired state. So our Coaches Academies are robust. They work together and they meet monthly. They talk about very important topics such as L instruction, SPED instruction, high quality instruction, and work closely with our curriculum maps. Chapter 74 has been an emphasis and a focus. We wanted to ensure that our future-ready high schools would have the opportunities for our students to have experiences in high school to get them as best prepared for their future and experience different ways of learning. We also did a lot of work with guidebooks. We felt that to explicitly write and create process procedures and the work that we would have to be doing this year in order to share it across our system would be necessary. So we have guidebooks for special education. We have guidebooks probably for everything. We really did spend an awful lot of time trying to explicitly help our system understand the best ways to move our district forward. As you all know, you are part of this Vision of a Learner, which is a actualization of our future-ready framework for learning, and we put a lot of time and effort into it. It is not just a nice thing that looks pretty. It is at the heart and center of everything that we're doing. There's been a tremendous amount of effort to date around Vision of a Learner, and you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in the Worcester Public Schools that's not familiar with what the Vision of a Learner embodies. The Q teams, you remember last year we did speak to you about reorganizing district resources in a more intentional way so that district personnel would be experts in schools in a particular quadrant. And so our Q teams, well, were underway last year, and in their inaugural year, they were quite successful in supporting schools and teachers, and had a lot of immediate feedback from schools about how essential and helpful that they were. We'd like to say they're even better this year. In curriculum maps, a lot of quiet work went on behind the scenes with our liaisons. We now refer to them as curriculum specialists, where they worked very hard for, in order to create a written, aligned curriculum. In order to reach that desired state of coherence and consistency. We recognized that we needed at the district to provide that guidance for us, for our teachers and for our schools. And one of the most exciting things that we were able to do last year was, with Marco and Andrew's help and their team, create these data dashboards. And these data dashboards provide in the minute, at your fingertip, data regarding schools, assessments, attendance, anything a principal, a teacher, or a school-based team would need to know. So all of that went into work last year. And you'll see the tree in the middle, and that is our best representation of setting roots, planting a seed, and building a structure and a system that supports this ambitious improvement that we aim to be able to provide. I want to bring you to this year, and we are not abandoning anything we did last year. We're actually augmenting it, enhancing it, and improving it a bit. And we're focusing on, at the very top on the left, culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. In order to provide high-quality instruction, we know that we need to support our educators around finding the just right ways to support the variety of different learners that we have in our classrooms. This will be a very important initiative that we work through this school year. Also, access to grade level content for ELs. So one of the things that we have in our curriculum maps is to ensure that there are intentional EL strategies embedded in Tier 1 instruction. And we want to ensure that our ELs are receiving grade level instruction. And we're supporting our educators with what that means and what that looks. And Jessica Mendez is leading her team very effectively in order to help our district be better at serving the needs of our ELs. And if you looked at our data, you know that that's an area that we desperately need to attend to. Attendance teams. We recognize through a data dive that lots of our kids that were not meeting or exceeding, a lot of them had attendance issues. So we do know in order to learn, you need to be at school. So we know that we need to dedicate a commitment and a purpose from the district around monitoring, supporting, encouraging, and messaging how important attendance is. We all know that's important. But we do know that chronic absenteeism impacts learning, and chronic absenteeism on top of pandemic impacts learning. So we really want to help our families understand the need for our students to be at school as much as possible. Also, we looked at our science scores, and we know that science shouldn't just sit in science-tested grades, and we are working very hard to provide the resources for our elementary schools, because we know that science instruction is not as robust there as it needs to be. We want our students entering middle and high school with strong science backgrounds and foundations. And back to the top, green, data literacy. You're going to hear an awful lot about that this year. Data literacy is so much more than just looking at numbers. Data literacy is understanding what you see and what the implications for learning can be once we have these opportunities as teacher teams to study and engage in lesson design. We feel that we'll be able to reach that goal of high quality instruction. So data literacy, we have, believe it or not, a guidebook, and we have worked really hard to ensure that data is at the heart and soul also of everything that we do. And we also recognize that we have a variety of different types of learners, and different people come to in as much as we have different types of learners, we have different types of educators. And not everybody comes to the job at the same pace and the same time. So we really want to make sure our new people coming in have the supports that they need. And so we have a new ESL Teachers Academy, which is great. We've decided that we really need to emphasize and focus and support our APs in our high schools so that they're able to have the support and training and information that they need to do their jobs well. And we're working, like I said earlier, very hard in developing our coaches. I would have to say Worcester Public Schools has some of the finest coaches that you can find anywhere. We're very grateful to have them. They are key members to our improvement. We want to refer to them again as our force multipliers. If what we give them, they can bring back to their school, that is our ticket, we believe, to strong improvement. Data dashboards for teachers. I talked to you a little bit about last year. We created this never before data dashboard where you don't have to click all over the place. It's all for you in one place, which I can't say enough about from this team, the way they put that together. It is, again, going to be continually improved. And finally, pathway opportunities. We recognize that students need to know about these pathways long before high school. So Chris Chrysonis and his team are working very hard on bringing pathways down to middle schools and even into elementary. And then again, you see the tree in the middle. This is our tree with roots. It's going to be growing and blooming flowers or apples or whatever kind of tree this is once we have all of these pieces moving in the right direction. And finally, I want to leave you with something else about glimmers and possibilities in acceleration. Sometimes when we do these presentations, all we talk about are meeting and exceeding, and we do leave out a very important piece. We have the majority of our students sitting in partially meeting, and partially meetings means they're almost there. And we want to make sure that everybody understands that partially meeting is a good place to be, and it means that we are making progress. Even though we don't see the amount of students meeting and exceeding yet, we don't want you all to lose sight of the fact that we have a lot of kids who are almost there, and they are making progress. So this whole picture, looking at performance levels, is important when we look at this. And the other thing I want to leave you with, I think you say this every year, MCAS is one test, it's one assessment, and it never ever should be a judgment on a student's abilities, their potential, a school's quality, or a district's quality. It's summative information that we take, we look at, we dissect, and we research, and we review, and we create next steps. So as we talk about glimmers of possibilities and acceleration, you saw at the bottom, I know Dr. Lampe went through them, and he didn't call out every school, but in every single one of those slides, we have glimmers and possibilities that we wanted to highlight, and we're seeing acceleration. So MCAS is not a all or nothing, as you can see. We have students that are making good progress. We obviously have work to do, and I did want to leave you with the context that while we are like the other districts across the country, we pursue the best practices that we know will make a difference, and they include sense of belonging, consistency, coherence, good instruction over time, and being very proactive and responsive to data. And underneath all of that is the culture and climate that we want to build, where it's a place, every school is a place where a student wants to be. They're supported by all of their educators, and educators are supported by the staff with them. This is very hard work, and we have been hard at it for quite a while, and we will continue to do what we need to do to move our district to that next level. And I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Benares.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. And before I do my closing, I apologize, Dr. Lampe. We have 3 doctors sitting in front of us right now, and to be, as we heard, as you went through the data, how well-versed you are in data, so my apologies. And thank you for my trio of doctors that just presented to us. So, committee, as Dr. Moore said, we are by no means where we want to be as a district. We see that we have opportunities. We have so many of our children sitting there ready to go to that meeting and exceeding. But I have to say, when I look at these line graphs of how the state has done over time with MCAS and how Worcester has done, and we mirror it. It's fascinating to me. And as a researcher, I do have to question even possibly the validity of the assessments over the last few years, because the data shouldn't be going up and down like that, whether it's state or district. It makes me wonder, is it about how the children are actually doing, or is there something deeper around the assessment? If I were the one leading the work, I would be looking at the variability and why these lines look exactly the same. We have a gap, so we recognize that, but how interesting that we change as the state changes. That's very uncommon, and I would think that both Dr. Andre and Lampe would say the same thing as statisticians. You wouldn't expect to see that. So for me, as the superintendent of Worcester Public Schools, even the accountability system has changed over time. And so we're going to chase learning in this district. We're going to chase how our children are doing in the classroom each and every day. As the state figures out the accountability system, as the state improves the MCAS, that's great. But for us, it's about what happens for the 25,000 plus children that we serve in Worcester Public Schools. And when I look at the percentage who are sitting in that partially meeting expectations, and I think about who I see in my classrooms each and every day and the possibilities that they represent. Did you know that 49% of our children who are identified as multilingual children are at the developing or higher stage? What that means for those who aren't in education is they're having conversations with their classroom teacher just like their peers who English is their first language. Conversationally, the children are there. 49% of our multilingual children. That's something to say we can grow not only how our multilingual children are doing, because 49% of them are ready for us to do that with them, and 47% of our children are Latino. And so those two groups in particular, we can make such a great difference as a district. And I'm already I'm seeing it happen in our schools. I've been at 4 schools this week, and every time I come back into the office, I have a sense of hope and excitement about what's happening in our schools and the work that we are doing. So we're not where we need to be. We have gaps, we know it. And yet at the same time, we can see that there is great possibility. So I'm going to just close by saying, chasing the accountability system isn't going to get us anywhere. Chasing a test that seems to be fluctuating at a state level as much as at a district level. I want to see how we're doing on common assessments. I want to see how children are reading on a regular basis. I want to see the work that they do in their classroom each and every day and how engaged they are in school. I want to go into a high school and see children interested in what's happening in that high school, not counting the minutes to be able to have the bell ring so then they could actually check their phones. So that's what we're going to continue to chase in Worcester Public Schools, because that's what the vision of a learner is about. That's what our promise, the Worcester Public Schools promise, is about. This is one piece, but as Dr. Morris said, it is not everything. So with that, I turn it back to you, Mayor Petty.
Thank you. Member McCullough, followed by Member Mailman, followed by Member Benenda.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. Certainly a lot of data for us to take a look at, and certainly statistician type work is not my forte, but I feel like I've looked at so many results and surveys over the past few weeks. I'm getting a little bit stronger with my abilities to understand a little bit more. First of all, I echo the sentiments that we know that we do need something like the MCAS so that we have data, right? Because we have to make decisions utilizing data, but it's not the only data that we need to use or should be using. And over the past few years, I've continued to see more and more impressive things going on in our classrooms and students more actively engaged in learning and actually coming away with the takeaways as we're preparing them to be future ready for whatever that means for them. And I know that's been a concern for many districts, is are our students future ready? When we are focused on the results of a test, and as the superintendent mentioned, we want to be chasing the learning, right? Like that's what we want to see. That's where we want to see the growth. And then that growth will show in our data when we look at it with the MCAS data. And I really appreciate, when we look at the SY24 teaching and learning initiatives, we know how beneficial things such as the Coaches Academy, the Q teams, the curriculum maps have all been. I've been continually impressed by the work around curriculum maps and how that can help make sure things are consistent across the district for our students, but also meets the needs of a variety of different learning styles and types of learners. And as we continue now looking for what SY25 is going to bring, I think, when we're talking about the pathway opportunities and how much work is going on there and how much that will continue to improve things for our students. But, attendance is a age-long issue, right? We know that we continue to work on improving attendance for our students, but really focusing in on those attendance teams and tying in with those students that may be, struggling a little bit more when we look at this data, I think will be extremely important. And I agree that, we do have a lot of work to do. We knew we were going to have gaps and have areas of work. I mean, certainly you wouldn't have expected it to be another way, but, thinking of the glimmers of possibilities and acceleration, where we see how many students are actually partially meeting expectations that mean that they're on the cusp of where we want them to be so that we continue that growth is just so important to see as well. The one thing I will say, and I'm curious, and when we're looking at next year or SY25, for the science curriculum pilot, that is one of the things that I noticed with the data with the science MCAS results, that when you're looking at the male versus female, there's really very little overlap with the schools that had the success with the science, and through administration, through the chair to administration, correct me if I'm wrong on that, that seemed a little bit different than the math and ELA, that in science you had, I think it was the male, you had Lakeview, West Tatnick, and Hurd Street, or I might have this backwards, and then the other was Burncoat Prep, Jacob Hyatt, Nelson Place, and one other. So it didn't seem as there was much overlap with the science results, male versus female, as there were with the ELA and the math. So I'm curious, is that something that we're looking at when we're realizing we really need to be looking at the science curriculum, and that's why something like a science curriculum pilot is so vital through the chair?
Dr. Morse?
Through the chair, I think I understand your question, but I'm not sure I understand it totally. Are you asking, are we embarking on looking at science curriculum because we've noticed a need for it in our scores?
That's probably a more simplistic way of saying it. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, that's what I would say, but I just thought it was interesting, and maybe I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but it looked like with science in particular, when you compared schools that were, the meeting exceeding expectations, where you had overlap of schools for math and ELA, it was more common for schools to say, for example, Flag Street math for male and female was meeting exceeding. Flag Street math, ELA was meeting exceeding. But when you looked at science, there wasn't as much overlap. I think there was only one school. So I was just curious if that, when we're looking at science and the data, is that something we're looking at too when we see the disparity between, even the male and female at those levels? Because it seems like, a school can have a really successful outcome for the male students versus the female students. So I was just curious about that.
Through the chair, yes. That's a short answer, but
okay,
yes.
All right. No, all right. Thank you so much. No, that was really the only question I had. I appreciate the presentation and the data, and I look forward to continuing to get updates and then the second part of the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Member Mailman?
Thank you. When we got this and reviewed it over the weekend and in the last couple of days, I always want us to be talk about, not just this is where we're exceeding, but again, just like the other report that I spoke about a little while ago, the more I thought about it and the more I looked at your work, I think that there's actually great value in what was presented here tonight. So I appreciate what you did. I really appreciate that the look across districts that are like Worcester. And I guess through the chair, I don't know, I think maybe Mr. Allen might have this answer, but it is stunning to me. And we know kids in Boston don't get to school until noon time because their buses are late, yet their MCAS results are way higher. And I just want to remind ourselves, because once again, we had Student Opportunity Act, we lost big budget money, we were not able to make the case that that inflation factor meant something, and so we're set back again. It's not excuse stuff, it's just like reality. So can I ask through the chair, Mr. Allen, how much more money Boston gets per student than we do, roughly?
Mr. Allen?
I know it's a shocking number.
Through the chair, so Boston gets the same foundation budget formula as we do. It's how much Boston spends per pupil more than Worcester.
Okay.
And it's about $10,000 more per student.
So they have other revenue sources? Is that,
Yeah. Okay. So they might as well be Cambridge or whomever else. And then the only other question I wanted to ask about other towns was Lowell. In a couple of areas, Lowell had some bumps, and I didn't know if anybody's had a chance to kind of check that out yet.
Through the chair, no, we have not, but that has been a point of discussion. We want to engage in conversations with Lowell and see what they're using, what they're doing, and see if there's any thing that we could learn from Lowell.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Benenda?
I did some research. I need to read my screen, so is it okay if I sit instead of being able to?
Go ahead, Member Benenda.
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation. I find some of it very confusing, and I want to explain what is confusing. So I think meeting and exceeding got used for two different things. So it would be confusing to somebody that might not understand. So meeting and exceeding, there's 500 or more on MCAS. That's one meeting or exceeding. And then the other one, meeting or exceeding the improvement target. So they were used interchangeably. For example, on page 16, the Black American Achievement, it was the school target, so they met their target. But what's listed on here is that they met the state. It was listed on here that they met the state exceed or meet, and it's actually the improvement target that they met. So it became confusing, so I did my own analysis. I'm sure that other people may have got confused on that too, and there's two different things. So first of all, there's 20 schools I'm concerned about. At looking at the analysis, I know we've always had about 10 that we're concerned about. We have some of the same ones on here that we had before, and we have some that got out of intervention that are back on. So my number one that I'm concerned about is North High, and this is not a reflection of the staff there, but we really have to think about what are we going to do. They were a 3 in 2023. They have dropped to a 2 school percentile now. Only 24% of the students had limited or no progress towards their targets. And the state identified it requires intervention for all groups, whites, student disabilities, low income, Hispanic, Latino, high needs, low participation rate for whites. Second school is a Burncoat Senior High. Although they kept their school accountability percentage, only 41% of them made moderate progress toward their targets. They also are requiring intervention through the state. They're among the lowest 10% of schools, low student performance for whites, and also students with disabilities and high needs. Next one is Worcester East Middle. They had in 2023 a 6, they're down to a 4. Only 42% of them made progress. They are also requiring intervention. They have low student group performance for white students and students with disabilities. Woodland Academy, that has been a challenge for us over the years. They went from a 9 to a 6. They did, though, however, have substantial progress toward targets. And they are probably requiring assistance because they were under that 10 school percentile. A surprise last year and again this year is Forest Grove. They went from, they're a 7 right now in their accountability. They were previously a 12. And only 27% of their students made moderate progress toward their targets. They're the lowest performing 10% of schools, and their low student group performance, surprisingly, is Asian, and they do require intervention. Grafton Street went from a 12 to a 7. They did have 55% making substantial progress, which is wonderful, but they also require assistance. Elm Park has been a school that was an underperforming school for us. Their accountability did not change, but they are also requiring assistance according to the state. And now we have Vernon Hill. It is down to 10 on accountability, and they also are requiring intervention. Our next one is Burncoat Middle School. They are 43% made their targets, and they're also requiring intervention. Burncoat Street Prep went from a 15 to a 10. Only 44% received progress toward targets, and students with disabilities, a focus there, they require intervention. Columbus Park went from 15 to 12. They do have 49%, though, of students making moderate progress, and they are requiring intervention. Clark Street School, which was a school that had improved for us, went from 19 to 12, and they 46%, and they are also requiring intervention, and their low participation rate from Afro-Americans. Claremont, which has been a school before that we've worked with, went from an 11, went up in their accountability, but only 32% had moderate progress towards their targets. And the low performance group for them are Ls and former Ls, and they require intervention. The other schools that I was really surprised about was, for example, Worcester Arts Magnet. Certainly, that's been a very high-performing school for really the history of my time in the Worcester Public Schools. They do still have a very high school percentage. However, only 29% of the students made progress towards their targets. So you have your accountability, and then you have progress towards targets. That's hard to believe, 29% toward their targets. Another school that, I'm mentioning these schools, again, not because of the staff, but to say we've got to look at these. This is the official accountability way that schools by the state look at us for what we're teaching. So although it's only one form, it is the form that you get your accountability from the state. My concern was about Worcester Tech. Going from 61% in 23 down to 48. That's a 13% decrease in scores, and only 34% receive moderate progress towards their goal. Now, they're not requiring intervention. However, that was our flagship school, so there's something that we need to look at there to see, like, how is it that only 34% made progress towards their targets? The next school is Canterbury. Let me get Canterbury on my little chart.
Are you going to call every school? Or?
No, I'm only doing the ones that we should be worried about. Of course not, I'm not calling every school. I think there were 20, however, and I think it's important that we look at that, right? All right, Canterbury. In 23, there were, percentile rate was 48. They've gone down to 29. That is a 19% drop. That's a huge drop. And only 36 had moderate progress towards their targets. Wauwikis, the Spark School, went from 38 percentage in 23 down to 25 in 24. That's 13 percentage drop at Wauwikis Road School, and only 44% of the students made their targets. The next one is Chandler Magnet. They were 28 and 23. They're gone down to 16 and 24. That is 12% decrease in their performance, and only 44 moderate progress towards their targets. And Union Hill is the next school. Union Hill was a school that was underperforming, brought itself up, was no longer on our list. Still does not require intervention, but went from 28% to 15, which is a 13% decrease. However, they do have 56 students making substantial progress towards their targets. And then Claremont went from 11 up to 14, which was great. However, only 32% of Claremont students met their targets. And let's see, so I think that was my big, I have also Burncoat. Other schools that you might want to look up is Burncoat Prep, and Burncoat Middle School. I did want to mention Vernon Hill School, Elm Park, Grafton Street, and then I was shocked at Forest Grove. They went from 12%, number 12% in 23 to 7, and only 27% got moderate progress towards the targets. And Forest Grove is a school in need of intervention. So those were the accountability that I was concerned about. Also, progress towards targets, again, is another thing. And progress towards targets, there were schools that I was concerned about also. They did not meet their targets, and they had very large numbers. So, for example, Union Hill, again, did not meet their targets. Let me see if there's any others that I had not already mentioned. So, although the presentation showed some information, it really didn't show what is really happening, and that there are over 20 schools that we have concerns about. So now my question is this: what are we going to do about it? There are certainly on your list of your 4 things: sense of belonging, coherence, consistency, multi-year access to quality instruction, data literacy. What I think is missing there is staff development and training of the staff. We can have all these structures in place, we can have all these people, but obviously we're missing out on our training for staff. The second that we're missing out on is our support for staff. For all these schools, the 14 plus the additional ones that I talked about, there are also challenges that are happening simply by the ending of certain programs in the district. So, for example, high schools now, in particular, are struggling with SLIFE students who no longer have a special school for them. Their students are in the classroom having difficulty, don't know English, have not had a history of being in school, and there is no support for the staff and no support happening for the children either. And then the last one is, I was very disturbed about, is the itinerant goals, a memo that went out to itinerants about what their goals should be this year, a recommendation, and it actually addresses special ed. It actually says that their goals this year is to make sure that 50% of students on their caseload move into inclusion, and out of the C grid into the B grid. That, to me, was an unbelievable memo to give to itinerant staff, meaning now there's going to be less support for students that need them in self-contained classrooms, and the push is to move special ed kids without support services into regular ed classrooms. So we're looking at 20 schools of concern. We have students being placed in regular classrooms that already have a lot of students in them. There's not enough staff, and we're expecting a teacher to go in there, raise up our scores, raise up our accountability, make our targets, and we're providing no extra support. So I'm hoping that the next meeting we'll have a plan that is given to us that's going to show how are we going to help our staff be able to do this work and bring up these scores. Thank you.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Through the chair, Dr. Morris, can you remind me, when did we started CKLA last school year because we had been using reading materials to teach children how to read that were not working? When did we start with Faunus and Pinnell?
Through the chair, in 2017.
So 2017 was when our kindergarten students, when we were supposed to start teaching them. And so in 2017, what grade would those students be right now? So kinder 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. They would be our 6th graders?
Through the chair, yes.
Those would be the first time, so those would be 6th graders taking the assessment right now, when we were using materials that we know were not part of the science of reading.
Through the chair, that is correct.
So it does not surprise me that our children are not doing well on MCAS because they're struggling on learning how to read. We've had now 1 year of materials that when I go to classrooms and I talk with teachers, although they're still learning how to use the materials, they will very much say that the materials are teaching children how to read. And what we saw in our DIBELS last school year and at the end of last year, and what we will show the committee next committee meeting, is how our current students are doing right now at the beginning of the year in reading and in STAR. So I would like you to speak more to why we had to make that change, why it was so important to our staff that we actually gave teachers the materials that they needed so that children could read, because we were doing a disservice to them. And now they're not doing as well on the assessment, and we have accountability issues, of which I'm going to say the accountability system has changed multiple times just in the 3 years I've been here, that we're not going to chase accountability, we're going to chase learning, we're going to give teachers the resources that they need, which include a curriculum that actually teaches children how to read at the elementary grades, so they're not struggling when they get into middle and high school. So please enlighten us more on the science of reading.
So through the chair, the science of reading is basically the body of evidence and research that is available that describes the way students learn to read. And it is very involved with structured reading. So this structured reading provides the explicit and systematic phonics instruction, but it is explicit, progressive, aligned, and coherent. So it's rooted in data. So students learn skills, apply skills, and there's repeated practice, and teachers have a succession of how skills are provided for students, and students become oriented to learning something, practicing it, and learning it. The balanced reading, or the program that Fountas and Pinnell espoused to provide instruction for students, that was based on the 3 cueing system. And very basically, it did not really provide students the tools or the way to decode words. It provided other ways. They could guess, they could look at pictures, they could use grammatic context within the text, but they were not given the keys to how to decode words for themselves. So when they came upon unfamiliar words, often they were guessing at what it could be based on the other words around it, or potentially a picture in the text. When they come across unfamiliar words now, they go back to, or they will be going back to, the rules and the phonics instruction that they have learned about how to attack words. So the difference in the change has been based on the current research. When we learn new things and we learn better ways to do things, it's our responsibility to give our students what research shows. And so with that, we looked at data. We recognized that we were not making adequate progress even before the pandemic, and then the pandemic changed everything in schools. So I wanted to just share with the committee that Member Benenda did go through all these schools. I don't want the committee to think that we have not spent hours taking apart all of the MCAS data. And we believed that the best use of this time was to provide a high-level understanding of the district itself, rather than go into the specific data for every single school. But in every single school that we work in, that Member Benenda mentioned, we have a very comprehensive improvement plan and supports in place and professional learning. So we take it very seriously, and we don't look at schools as not making adequate progress, as not doing well. We look at them as needing more or needing extra and additional supports. So back to science of reading and CKLA, we believe that these resources will assist and help these elementary students be reading on grade level. It's very hard to make more than a year's worth of growth in 1 year. We're looking at the long game here, like Dr. Manara said. We're not looking just at an accountability system that sorts our schools. We're looking at the accountability system and the data we get from MCAS as important information, but not the most important information. The most important information we have is what's happening in schools and what's happening with our students and what our teachers and administrators are doing about it on a daily basis. So I just wanted to go back to the slide. I think there was some conversation about the targets. So I'm going to hand it to Dr. Lampy to explain slide 16. That was somewhat confusing.
Thank you for the opportunity for clarification. So every slide where in the figure itself there are statistics presented in terms of 34% of Black or African American students meeting or exceeding expectations, that's the percentage of students in the district who had an average scaled score greater than 500. All of the individual call-outs, some of them describe explicitly just the percentage of students at a particular school who met or exceeded expectations. For instance, on the right-hand side, we mentioned nearly more than half of all Black or African American students met or exceeded expectations at South High, 49%, and Worcester Tech, 56%. That's the percentage of students at that school who have an average scaled score of 500 or greater. There's a couple of other instances in the slides where we might say something like there's a percentage of students, or a percentage of schools rather, where the students at that school met or exceeded expectations at a level above the state. What that is showing is whether or not that group of schools had a percentage of students with an average scaled score of 500 that was greater than the average percentage of students across the state level. So it's not in reference to percentage of students meeting targets. It's simply comparing the schools themselves to the state rather than the district as a whole to the state. Thank you.
If we can just speak to one more thing. There was a statement made about our SLIFE programs, which SLIFE is an acronym for children who are new to the country in a secondary setting and may have interrupted school interrupted learning in the school, in their schooling. And that might be that they have missed some years of schooling in their country of origin, or they may never have attended school. To say that we do not have that program in Worcester Public Schools is not accurate. We have the new Citizen Center, we have had that. That has not gone away. Families must choose to attend the new Citizen Center. This is not a program that we can force a family to go to, and more families are choosing not to attend it. I have already shared this with Member Benenda. What I hear from family members and community is they do not trust the new Citizen Center. It was holding their children back, and so in the neighborhoods, they tell each other, don't put your child there. It was holding children back. We have revamped that, but to change the reputation is going to take some time. So it is not accurate to say that we do not have that program. We do have that program. What is accurate to say is that many families are choosing not to place their student there, and it is on the district to make those changes so that it is an option that families want to send their child to. We also are looking at how can we offer a similar type of program at each one of our comprehensive high schools so that children don't have to be separated from their peers, because secondary children's socialization is extremely important to their maturation process. So want to be clear that what is shared on the floor is accurate. We still have a program called New Citizen Center, both at the elementary and at the secondary level. Thank you.
Member Benenda?
Yes. So I just want to respond to a couple of things. Fountains and Pinnell was actually recommended by Dr. Morse as a program to bring to the elementary schools. Also, she did use it at Union Hill, and it actually was one of the programs that brought an underperforming school to a school that exceeded expectations. The program was used throughout Massachusetts until it got a partial review, and then after the partial review, DESE changed the recommendations to no longer have that program. So it wasn't like we picked a bad program. We picked a program in collaboration with experts in the science of reading that had actually showed that the program had been used successfully and turned a school around. As far as the SLIFE program goes, we did talk about that program. The one for the young adult is not really a program. The kids go to the Gerald Creamer Center, not much support. My concern is The students are coming to comprehensive high schools. There is no SLIFE program in comprehensive high schools. Students are sitting in classrooms not understanding the language, have never been in school, and the attendance rate of those students is not great because they don't feel like they're part of that community. I did say in meeting with Dr. Montrez on Monday that it would make sense to have a SLIFE program in each high school where the students would have the support that they need and the teachers also would have that support, so that for our teachers are not trained on how to teach SLIFE students either. They have SEI, but SEI is not a program that is effective with SLIFE students. So I'm hoping that this is bothering a lot of teachers at this point. They want to work with the kids and teach them. They're feeling like they're not being successful in their craft, and that I'm looking to see whether or not we could add more support to those schools that have SLIFE students. Thank you.
Dr. Moss?
Through the chair, I want to acknowledge that we were not trying to say that the previous administration made a bad decision. I want to share that Fountas and Pennell at the time was the best choice because the materials and resources that we have today are not available. I do want to say, though, the Fountas and Pennell was not available when I was a turnaround principal at Union Hill. I went there in 2010, and in this Fountas and Pennell classroom was not material that was available. But we did use balanced literacy because that was what was the preferred pedagogical method at the time. But I did want to respond to Member Benenda and not have her believe that the blame was being put on the past administration for selecting Fountas and Pennell. When I said know better, do better, that just meant that we understood there were new research, there was new information, and in order to give our kids and our teachers the best and most appropriate updated curriculum in the way students learn to read, it has come to our attention that Fountas and Pennell no longer, and it's been a program that many districts have left behind since this new information has come forward. So I just wanted to share that information in order to provide some context to the comments.
Thank you. Just for clarification, in regards to that, when did they come out and say that Fountas and Pennell was no longer a standard that should be used?
Through the chair, so there's been lots of information that has come out since the school year 21-22. So researchers have been working in order to identify the best ways students learn to read. And there's been a lot of things in the news, there's been a lot of information about it, and we've been following it. So the science of reading and structured literacy are two ways that CKLA provides a more robust, well-rounded opportunity for our students to learn to read.
Thank you. Mayor Petty?
I'm not sure what I'm going to say, but I'm not happy, I'll tell you that. But I should have stopped in some sense. I've been here for 13 years now. I don't think we ever called it a school. I could be wrong. Even on the MCAS results, we usually do totals. Maybe before we broke it down by school once in a while for a specific reason. I was going to stop it. I didn't stop it because it can make matters worse sometimes. And transparency is sort of important because people will be asking questions, why did you stop it? We have a lot of teachers, administrators who work pretty hard. And I could point fingers. I've been around a while, so it's easy to point fingers, right? And by the way, the data is probably the best data we've gotten over the last 2 or 3 years, especially in the last year or so. So I want to compliment the whole team here. And I don't know you well, but the data has been pretty unbelievable that you've been presenting us. This, and a couple of weeks ago, you presented some other data. And I don't know what the intent is, because I know this administration, previous administrations worked pretty hard for the students here and try to make it better. And you could point fingers and say, well, this kid is sophomore in high school. That's when you take the test sophomore, start in 3rd grade. Well, that kid, where did that kid come up from? And usually, I don't expect results from Dr. Monterez for about going to the 4th or 5th, 6th year, right? It takes time to build up, especially when you start with grammar school. Put a lot of resources in there. See, it's nobody's fault. I'm just saying, like you just said, you changed the whole curriculum because it took 4 or 5 years to figure out what wasn't working, right? It was nobody's fault. We did our best at the particular point. But and the accountability standards have changed, I believe. Dr. Moore, maybe you can explain that to the audience about accountability standards, and they change probably every year or every couple of years, or how does that work?
Through the chair, since I've been here, so this is my 3rd year, there's been something different each time since I've been here. So the first year it was light, accountability light, whatever that means. Second year was 60-40, is that correct, Dr. Andre? But not for everybody. And then this year it's 60-40 across. So when we're trying to compare, there's no comparison. I'm like, what's going to be next year? I don't know. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to chase the accountability. And accountability is not a reflection of the teaching, as was said previously. That's not what we do accountability. That's not why states do that. States do accountability to compare schools against each other. That's what accountability is.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the stats. No, you can look at each school individually. You can look at the general stats. We compare. I bet you went to each school in each district, the urban schools that you mentioned here tonight. You could take a couple of schools apart in those districts. We're about the state average, a little below in some cases. Comparison urban, we're better, not better. Probably have the same issues, challenges as other urban school districts have. And so what I don't want to see happen is, what I've seen happen, which makes me happy, over the last 2 years, a sense of pride, sense of hard working, caring over the last 2 years, and the teachers, the educators, paraeducators, the administrators. And by really calling out a school, I think what we built up for the last 2 years, you just tear it out. And I don't see how that helps. I understand if you want to get up and say, listen, this school, collectively, we got other issues in some of the schools. I get that. And don't believe me. Me and Dr. Monterez have these discussions. Dr. Morse mentioned that she understands they go through, I think what was asked, what are we doing for these schools? Dr. Morse mentioned what we're doing in the schools. We have an improvement plan for every school. In the schools that are probably even doing well, we probably have an improvement plan, I would think, for every school. And that's what we've been working on. And I believe, my heart and soul, that we're going in the right direction in the school system. And it's great to be a cheerleader. But listen, the challenges is important because it makes everybody better. It's how you say it and it's how you do it. And I don't think by calling out the principal, calling out the students, calling out the teachers, because they are working so hard with so many challenges. Look at the challenges. City Council talks about the challenges on the citywide level. People coming into the city. We take everybody in. People who don't speak English, people who move from one neighborhood to another school to another school, move from state to state, from city to city. And I think we do a good job, really making these kids feel like they're welcomed here in the Worcester Public School System. And we're going to try our best to make you succeed. And I think it's only going to get better. Sometimes it takes time. But I just think, I just want to get down and say what I said, because people have worked too damn hard over the last couple of years to make changes. And I think it's important that we stay on track, make our schools better, and challenge. I'm not questioning we shouldn't challenge people and challenge the administration. That's our job. It's how you do it sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. We all set?
I'm sorry, Diane Biancaria, followed by Member Johnson.
Very interesting evening. There is a lot of content in what we received over the last week. How I like to look at it is highlighting what we know works and what we know what our challenges are. So I'm going to ask, what's the biggest support we have in our schools right now that is going to help us help our students and our staff?
Can you repeat that one more time, the question? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
What's the biggest support that we have right now for our students and our staff?
Dr. Morse?
So if you look at the end of the presentation, we had a variety of supports and structures and systems that we have in place to support our improvement. But truly, the educators we have in the buildings are our greatest asset in helping them with the very challenging role of teaching in a Worcester Public Schools is one of the most important things that we do. So we talked a little bit about the Q teams. We talked about curriculum maps. We have an aligned curriculum. We're working towards common assessments. We have HQIM, high quality instructional materials, and we have coaches at every building, and we have an intentional plan for our coaches and how we can bring our coaches to our schools to support our educators. We're trying to take a lot off the plate of our teachers by providing many more district resources. So our teachers aren't the only people designing instruction, that we are bringing high quality things to them so that they're able to do that. I talked a lot about guidebooks, systematically organizing the district, and ultimately our data, the way we have our data dashboards lined up. So we have a lot of things moving to help improve instruction in our buildings. Our schools are unique. Each and every one is different, and not all schools need all of the same kind of supports. So the Q team coaching model is very, very helpful, but we're aware of the priorities for every school, and we're working closely with each school. We're working as a district to improve the district, but also, as I said, the school improvement plans that schools have written. We are working with schools to help bring improvements to the schools through the identified priorities that the school team has picked as their most important things to accomplish this school year.
So when we look, thank you. So when we look at what you described as the support that is working with all of our schools, when we take a picture, a snapshot of where we are right now, we're looking at 20 that need help, 24 that are working. So what do we get from the 24 to bring over to the 20 to help them out? How are we going to do that?
Through the chair, that's a...
And those numbers, excuse me, those numbers are going to vary. So if you're going to tell me 18, don't. I just want to know how are we going to make it better for the ones that need the support?
So through the chair, that's a very good question. We have networks and we have coaching walks. I do walkthroughs with principals. Dr. Menares does walkthroughs with principals. And we also have educators working in buildings where things are happening in a different way to learn from each other. So network learning is an attempt that is also going right now, and it's also a direct, important piece to our improvement this year. So your thoughts are our thoughts. Look at the schools that are doing something really well, learn from them, and build that to scale.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Besides dollars, because that's an easy crutch, and everybody's going to say that, what are our biggest challenges right now in our schools? Anybody?
Dr. Morse?
So there are numerous, through the chair, sorry, there are numerous challenges at every school. Like I said, every school is different. We have large schools and we have small schools. And the biggest challenge we have right now is working and improving the progress of our multilingual learners and our special education students. So right now we have a district improvement plan around improving Tier 1 instruction, because most of our students spend most of the time in the classroom. And they get pulled out for different services, but we want to ensure that every minute that they're in school, that staff are trained and equipped and have the resources to provide the necessary instructional accommodations that they may need or modifications. So our biggest challenge is ensuring that our Tier 1 instruction is top-notch, and that's our priority this year as a district.
So as we work, thank you. As we work towards what our challenges are and what our support is, we're looking at a snapshot of a test that is taken to evaluate students that people in Massachusetts are going to be voting on in November and making a determination if this is even going to exist any longer, and we don't even have a plan B to replace what we have for a plan A. So with that said, as we move forward, the possibilities are there, but if we can't move some of the challenges, and when I say move, I'm talking about maybe we could look at different avenues, because apparently what we have right now isn't working in many of our schools as far as what the challenge is. So maybe we need to concentrate on a few particular areas as an administration and as a school committee to say, if we try this, if we try that. So we bring the level up of our schools that need some support, and we're handling the challenges that are covering many of our schools. Because the response you gave is a legitimate response. The problem with that is it's affecting almost every single one of our schools, but 20 or more are doing pretty good with it. Not even pretty good, but just surviving. And then we have the other level that are really struggling. So we have to come up with a better medium than we have. So as we go forward, that would be one of the areas that I would like to see administration bring to us. All right, we're going to try this idea, see if this is going to work. What are other districts doing? We made a chart here, and I'm sure this team spent many hours putting this chart together. I don't live in any of these towns. I'm not concerned with what Holyoke is doing, Fall River is doing. I'm concerned with how Worcester is doing. However, part of what perhaps administration in our system could do is find out if that's our challenge and that's our largest challenge, somebody else has to have it also. What are they doing with their system? How is it working for them? And we don't need to travel off to Boston to get a response. We have many towns on this little list that we compared to, and I don't even know why we're comparing, but that's the chart I have in front of me, which is fine, but I'm not going to be concerned with what their numbers are. I want to know what works. And if their numbers are better than ours, if they're worse than ours, what is their challenge? Are they in the same system that we are in as far as dealing with a district that has the same challenges? If so, narrow it down and figure out what they are doing that we're not doing. Because that's what's going to help us. That's what's going to help our kids, and that's what's going to help our staff. Because if we're going to make a comparison, that's the comparison we should be looking at. Because this comparison certainly sounded as though everything was running smooth and we were doing 1% of this status and another % of that status. The comparison is going to make a difference, because come December, we're going to be looking at something different probably. And if we're not, they're going to have to improve what we're looking at right now. So the quick snapshot of what numbers are and how we're doing is one thing, but how we're going to move forward and handle what they need for support in our schools and handle what our biggest challenges in our schools, we're going to have to be pretty innovative and put some effort into it. I thank you for tonight's report, but as I said, and I've said it on other reports, over the many years I've been on school committee and worked for Worcester Public Schools, I don't need to compare Worcester to somebody else. I need to know what we're doing. Thank you.
Member Johnson.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you, administration, for this report. there's been so many things said tonight. You know, again, I really actually wanted to talk about some accountability. It was good to hear the superintendent just kind of talk and explain herself, and Dr. Morse did a great job on explaining some things. You know, I like the data. I do still believe, for me, accountability is something that I'm interested in. And one thing when we look here is, you know, we saw the thing on how South High, Doherty, I think UPC, due to the AP courses and stuff they got bronze and whatever. So we're doing some good things, and it says that here in accountability. And it talks about, you know, different areas where high school students did it, whatever. I still think we need to take a look at that, because I think one thing that's huge is the chronic absenteeism with our students. It's very concerning. So I have 2 kids in the school, and part of the reason why I'm here today is that I wasn't happy early on when my kids were in school. And then COVID hit, and I wasn't happy during COVID, and then we come out of COVID, and here we are. Context, guys, I think we're kind of forgetting this. My son was in 2nd grade when we hit COVID, and he missed the end of his 2nd grade year and basically missed his whole 3rd grade year of school. Remote learning was not effective. And then he went back in a hybrid model 2 days a week for a few hours here and there. That was not effective. Counteract that with students who don't speak English as a first language at home, or a student with disability or whatever. What effect do you think that almost 2 years of lost learning did? Let's look at the educators. They were at home trying to teach 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever grade students for the first time, never been done before, how to access curriculum, reading, do their work, do all these other things. They didn't have the professional training during that time. They didn't have all these other things. They lost out on time as well. We're all recovering here as a district, right? It takes time. Guys, it's been 4 years. 4 years that we've been out of this. Not a full 4 years. 4 years since it was hit. We're still recovering. The numbers don't look great. You read it in the paper. Everyone's down. The state's down. We all know that. I do truly believe that the administration, the district, the teachers, the supports, the system that we have in place that we're trying to do here are good systems, and we're working towards those to move the district forward. I truly believe that, and no one's going to sit here and tell me that I'm wrong here. I think we need to continue to support our educators, support our students, support the administration in moving things forward. You know, this back and forth on, this isn't about who did what well 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. We're at where we are now and where we're going to move forward. That's what we need to focus on. Because many of us in this room, and administration, executive, school committee, whatever, in 5 years, we're not going to be here. There's going to be other people moving forward and doing the work that we're trying to do now. And we need to set a good foundation moving forward for our leaders and people moving forward. So, you know, I just wanted to say that. But I don't know, Superintendent, I had asked you this question. I don't know if you have this answer. In regards, through the chair to the superintendent, do you know how many students this past school year that didn't receive a high school diploma due to not passing the MCAS?
Madam Superintendent?
Through the chair, were we able to find that data? I know we looked at it. So we were looking for, your question actually was twofold. It was they didn't pass the MCAS the first time, the 10th graders, but they were on course to graduate in terms of the coursework.
Correct.
Correct. So were we able to pull that data?
Through the chair, we would like to be able to provide that in what's happening. We pulled different data, so we must have misunderstood the question.
Okay, so can we get that into what's happening or whatever? You guys fine with that? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the report. Look forward to part 2 of the report to continue to have discussion and dialogue in regards to this. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Member Mailman?
Just a brief comment. We heard about an internal memo, and we had a discussion on the floor before about accounting for when we bring something to the public body, that we say, here's the internal memo that I got from X, because I don't know anything about the internal memo. So I just want to remind us that we had that discussion at some point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'd send that report, Member Benenda?
Sure. I just wanted to address a few points. One, the internal memo was anonymous, so I can't help you out with that one.
Talking about it, Ms.
Okay,
Mayor.
please don't interrupt.
Mayor, it seems inappropriate to.
Of all, I just want to clear up that school accountability is very important. It's important that we're honest with our data. The only way we can improve is to look at all the data, and the state does provide a great report. I'm sure everybody here has probably already looked at it in school administration, but it actually shows every single question that was asked on the MCAS test, and it tells you where your school did and then what the state did. And then in a red number, they tell you how far off you are from answering those questions. So it's fairly easy to look at that and say, wow, maybe we need to increase focus on writing in K through 12. I'm assuming this is part 1, so you said there was going to be a part 2, Superintendent. I'm just wondering if in that part 2, we could show what areas you've found out from the item analysis of the MCAS we need to improve per school. Also, Mayor, you mentioned that talking about accountability, that doesn't seem to say we have pride in our teachers and in our schools, but I do have a lot of pride in our teachers in our schools, and it is by looking at data and having those hard conversations about improvement that we do get improvement. That's how we're going to go forward, is looking at the data. It does tell a long story. And then also, you know, all districts in the state went through COVID, and all districts are struggling just like we are here. So that's why, instead of comparing us to other districts, it's great that we're compared to the state, so that there is a standard. The standards have not changed in many, many years. And that's what we're being evaluated on. We're not being evaluated on anything else but how is Worcester students meeting the standards. And the standards are set, meaning how are we preparing our students so they can be successful in the future. So I think it's good that we have a hard look at what schools need to improve, and the other big part is that how are we going to help them? There is a need for help in schools, so those schools that are showing that they need that extra help, I'm hoping that when you present your plan, you'll be able to focus on how are we going to give extra help to those schools. Thank you.
I just don't want people, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Petty?
I just don't want people to think that we don't provide support to our teachers. Dr. Moira and his team has brought in over the last 2 years what the superintendent's been doing for the last 2 years, providing support. Then we have improvement plans for every school, whether it's a good school, and we should compare to other urban cities. I'm sorry. The state, I'm comparing against Wellesley, Sudbury, Belmont. You want me to compare against them? Who's down? What do they get from? How much money do they get per student? I bet we're not even in the same ballpark. Not in the same ballpark. We serve over 24,000 students. Over 24,000 students. 20. We'll get that data pretty soon, probably over 25,000 students. But I don't want to think people are walking away that they don't have any support service. That's what we've been talking about for 2 years. 2 years. And it takes time. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you hit the nail on the head. It's about moving forward. I can look back at previous city superintendents, previous city managers, previous mayors. It's always easy to look back, right? It's how you're going to move forward knowing you have these challenges. Same challenges probably we've had for the last 10, 15, 20 years, too. So, but I really believe the course of act, I want people to, this school committee believes, majority of the school committee believes, that we're going in the right direction, putting the support services there. We're trying to put an infrastructure in place. And you're seeing the changes, I think anyways, maybe not in the statistics, but at least in the attitude, of the teachers, people in this room right over here to my right. Just the hard working that they're doing, the time. This ain't an 8 to 5 job, I'm sorry. Some people think it's easy, Teachers come in at 9, leave at 3, take summer off. No, that's not the case. It's not the case, especially for one of these people over here. You're probably working from 7 to 12 midnight, And some of these teachers who are dedicated, they're doing the same thing. And but I just don't want people to get the idea that we don't provide support services. We're not putting an infrastructure in place. And also, I just want to be clear, just for a correction. The MCAS, what happens in November on that test, the test is in existence going forward, no matter what that vote is. So that test will always stay in existence unless the legislature changes it in the future. So I just want to make people clear on that. That test is not going away. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member Guardiola, do you want that in your committee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to send that report to Teachers and Learning. We'll take an item out of order since we've had a person sitting here since we started. But I'm going to take 4-95, consider the establishment of a capital reserve fund for the Central Mass Collaborative. So the motion is going to be approved. We take it on a roll call. Do you want to speak on it? Okay. Dr. Monterez.
Through the chair, actually would like to invite Dr. Farrell. Thank you so much for waiting. If you could come forward and just give a brief explanation as to what this request is, and then if the committee can then move forward with the approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak with you. I will be very brief. The Central Mass Collaborative I'm here on behalf of is requesting the school committee approve the establishment of a capital reserve fund for the collaborative. The reason we need this fund is the Central Mass Collaborative currently leases 3 buildings in the city of Worcester, and we're responsible for all the cost of building maintenance, repairs, and improvements. And the establishment of this fund would allow us to retain a portion of any annual surplus for future capital needs, and also would mitigate the need to raise tuition or rely on member districts should we have an emergency capital need arise. I want you to know that there are some restrictions on the fund. The fund would be capped at $1 million. It would not need to be immediately filled. Funds would only be added as available and would not be a burden to our member districts. The CMC presented, in order to do this, we presented a capital plan to our board of directors, which is the 3 member district superintendents for approval. That plan was proposed, and I believe it was given a copy to you on September 12th. And now we are looking for our member districts to approve the capital plan and the establishment of the funds. Once created, the capital fund would be voted on an annual basis through our budget process by our board of directors, and any money into or out of would also be approved through our board. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to consider this request on the behalf of Central Mass Collaborative.
What's that? Roll call. Motion to approve, roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. Okay, we're going back to the agenda. So you can maybe, before I do that, just want to make sure. Business. Okay. So we have a new format here of the, we are going to go to the standing committees. The first one, we already passed the minutes. Now we're going to the standing committee votes. So we'll take it in 3 sections. The first section 1, Finance and Operations, the September 13th meeting. Any questions? None. We'll take collectively on a roll call. Roll call. Prior to doing so, Member Johnson.
Thank you. I just have some questions regarding, can't find it. I'm sorry, did I speak too soon? Is this regarding fog or just everyone? Just fog. I'm sorry, I don't want to speak on fog.
Okay. Okay. Roll call on 1.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Financial Operations Governance is number 2. Financial Operations and Governance, September 23rd, 2024. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, we have number 3, Teaching and Learning and Student Success, September 26th, 2024. I believe we have someone who wants to speak on this item.
Jermaine.
Who does? Oh, come, just stand up, introduce yourself and what school you're from, prior to doing so.
Good evening. My name is Mary Jane Batar. I'm a senior at Worcester Tech in painting and design. And I'd like to speak on the 389.3 item regarding Chapter 74 programs and specifically at Worcester Tech admissions and the whole discussion of the new admissions policy implemented a couple of years ago. So me and a friend of mine who is also a senior, we spoke with admin and had several meetings last year regarding the new admissions policy, researching everything it has to do and why it was implemented. And we've learned a lot and we have a few concerns, but we've also learned about the benefits of the policy. But the reason we wanted to, or I'm speaking on both of our behalves, is because we find this policy to be like a very dramatic change to the policy Worcester Tech used to have. Our year is the last year that was a merit-based system, and now once 2025 graduates, it's all going to be the lottery-based system, which is a really beneficial system to our school because we're getting so many different groups of students who are excelling in shops and are learning to excel in academics as they go on through the years. But a problem we're running into is the motivation in our school and students coming into Worcester Tech and schools like Worcester Tech not wanting to, freshman year, they're having that hard time wanting to be there, and it's kind of harming the community of the school itself. And this is what we've talked to our admin about all year, is wanting to change the wording in the policy regarding like suspensions, and we think some changes should be made. There should be a little bit more of like requirements towards like less suspensions. You've shouldn't really, like, what we thought was you shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 suspensions going into Worcester Tech, because we are a professional school and we work, and we are the school that works. We have 23 shops, and it's very important that you're on your best behavior at Worcester Tech, just starting in freshman year, because you are exploring shops. And it's just very important to like come in knowing the environment, knowing the school, and knowing that this is a school that requires professionalism, requires for you to be the best you can be at all times. And we definitely do think there's so many like benefits to the lottery process. And we both teach freshmen who came in through the lottery process this year, and we're meeting so many great students who are so excited to be there. But at the same time, the majority of students are having a hard time finding a motivation, and especially in an accelerated school like Worcester Tech, where you're cut in academics, so you have to speed up and keep track of that workload. So we just wanted to speak on it a little bit and just emphasize as Worcester Tech students how important it is to review the policy and definitely make some changes to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Johnson?
Thank you to the chair. Actually, I had filed this back in, I believe it says March of 2023, and finally get a chance to read the work that's been going on in the subcommittee in regards to this, and I thank for administration for this report. I actually I had a couple questions, but I'm not sure now. And then actually speaking with student rep Mary Jane yesterday, I believe it was, and finding out that she was part of this, that was great to hear in regards to that. I do have a question. So in regards to the admission process, is there no longer, moving forward, there's no longer a criteria regarding academic performance at all? No? Okay. Is that across the board in regards to the superintendent or administration? I don't know. Is that across the board, or is that just at Worcester Tech? Does that also involve the comprehensive high schools?
Dr. Monterez?
Through the chair, I don't want to, I know the answer, but I always like to have the team come. They're the ones who do the work in and out. So if you could see, we have some great people. I'm not sure who's going to respond, but thank you.
Through the chair, I'd like to introduce our director for the comprehensive schools, Julianne Gamache, and she has the information for that.
Thank you.
So a few years ago, and Worcester is very aware of the changes that came about, the Department of Ed came in and set mandates for admissions policies. They left a little bit of leeway with each of the districts, but they did state that if you chose to use selective criteria, such as grades, you had to be able to ensure that it was not biased against any of our special populations. And I do believe I wasn't here then, but Worcester went to this format of a lottery, a selective lottery, tiered lottery is the right word, and that's how we've gotten to where we are.
Member Johnson?
Yeah. In regards to, I know I read it here, but in regards to school choice, or a kid who doesn't live inside Worcester and looking to school choice into either Worcester Tech or a comprehensive high school into one of the programs, we do not do that?
Through the chair, no. So students who are already in Worcester, who are school choiced into Worcester, prior to applying to either Worcester Tech or to one of the other Chapter 74 programs, are welcome to apply. But students from outside of the district cannot apply for school choice directly to go to either Worcester Tech or to one of the Chapter 74 programs in the comprehensive schools.
Did we ever do that?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't know. I know what this policy says now.
Okay. Okay. So, in regards to informing students at the middle schools in regards to what is being offered at Worcester Tech, I know they talked about the tours, and then at the comprehensive high schools, I know typically they go in at some point into the middle schools and meet with the 8th graders. Am I correct? Through the chair to administration.
So at the comprehensive high schools, there is an information, Chapter 74 information night scheduled for each of those schools. There is some presence in the middle schools as well. Some of the programs go in. We're making sure that we're getting as much information to middle school counselors as possible. And we will be holding another information Zoom that we held last year. We'll hold that again. And then there's some changes that are happening with the approach at Worcester Tech as well.
Okay. And in regards to that, through the chair to the administration, is that just for 8th graders, or is there any chance to start targeting like 7th graders, just getting them interested and understanding along with their parents on what is being offered at the comprehensive high schools and at Worcester Tech?
We do have a plan to start doing that as well. And some of that is also making sure that students are more aware of career options and pathways. And so there's a lot going on in the district to educate at the younger levels.
Okay.
Through the chair, we do have that also, as we said, expanding our pathways. We're looking at ways to entice through imagery, through quick second, couple-minute videos so they can see specifically what they are. We're also implementing a number of different opportunities in our middle schools this year with speaker series with different vocations and there's themes for every month, where they'll be going in and speaking primarily to just 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. And then we have opportunity fairs and other forums that will be happening for our grades 10, 11, and 12 students, and those will be happening on a monthly basis. So we have those programs. We know that we wanted to cut down on the number of students that are applying to schools to apply to that school and not particularly to a program, because if they don't like the program, it leads to non-success, which can in turn send them to a different school if they're not from that quadrant, if they don't do well in the Chapter 74 program, because it's difficult to make up those credits when they have those particular classes.
Thank you. So you worked on this, you guys done a lot of work on this over the past year and a half or so. What's the next steps? What's the plan?
Through the chair to implement.
I'm just wondering, because I filed this in March of 2023. I've been waiting to get some information. You guys have worked on it. My motion is going to be to file this. I know they're looking to hold this in TLSS. I'm just wondering, is there a reason to continue to hold this in subcommittee when, based on the item I put forth, you answered my question? I'm looking for this to be filed. I know it's being held there for some more data later on. I'm just wondering, could we file this and they file another item somewhere else? Huh? That's my motion to file.
Okay. Member Millman?
So I spoke a little bit with, after speaking with you, with the chair of our group, Dr. Morse, and if you look at the items looking for additional information, because I think since you filed this, there's probably been like 2 admissions policies, because it's been, we've made changes every single year, so it could have been filed last year. But it's not filed because this work on admissions is part of that equity stuff that's going on in this district. We had further questions looking for data breakdowns, including comparisons of application and enrollment. Should we be successful with Burncoat? That's going to open up another can of how are we going to do things. So this is an ongoing item, and there were specific items that we were looking for information for. One of the suggestions that Dr. Morse had through the chair to the clerk is, do we set up evidence? They used to have like a side sheet of additional items. Perhaps Member Johnson would like that better, so that he could understand that these other things have happened on an item since, and if I'm saying that incorrectly, please correct me, but that seems to make sense to me, because right in this data, it's talking about looking for other information. And it's something that we used to do before.
Member Johnson?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for that clarification. It isn't that I didn't see it. I understood it. I know that you're asking for additional information. the concern I have is, like, I've been waiting a year and a half for this. I finally got what I was looking for. I know that you guys are looking for an additional information. Can we just file this and they could keep the additional information that they're looking for and they could get that? I don't know.
So it says in the,
Because it seems like they're making motions in subcommittee for more information off of this. This never came out. Maybe I'm lost, because nothing ever comes out of committee sometime, and when it comes out, it's been years, and there's been so many things added to the original item that went in that it just gets lost.
so I think, so it says here in the motion, it was the final updated copy is sent back to the committee with the updates, right? So you're taking that final report and sending it back to committee, right? No?
So we'll take this final report and just send it back to
Yeah.
the committee, and they just continue to do the work on it?
Yeah.
Great. We'll do
That's
that.
why I read this. I
That
could be
sounds
wrong.
great.
But, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Member Johnson, it's not that we're just waiting on a report back. We're not going to be bringing it back up to full committee. It's just going to be a report to us. Once that report's received at subcommittee, then we will file it there.
You'll file it there, and then it will come back.
It would just be filed there, and it would end there. So it'll come back up. There wouldn't be any more conversation at this level.
All right. All
Okay.
set.
Okay. We got it. So we can take these collectively. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Vitale, are you all set? You're up next. Student Advisory Committee items, we're all set? They did a great job tonight,
Yeah,
Jill.
no items.
Okay. Next, we have approval of grants and financial items. We can take those collectively under N. Somebody has any questions? Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, we're on the general business. 4.56 we already did. 4.91, to provide October 1st enrollment data by grade per student by grade per quadrant. We're going to send that to the administration. Member Mailman?
Quick, can I ask through the chair if we know when this data is going to come before us? Do we have any best guess?
Member Superintendent? Member Superintendent.
Through the chair, we will be bringing that back in December. That's when it'll be certified by DESE.
Okay, not till December. Can I ask one other additional question? Although some aren't interested in the money, I certainly am. Do we know what the inflation factor is yet for this coming year?
Mr. Allen on the inflation factor?
Oh, well, let's see if we get it.
Through the chair, so the quarter ended September 30th, it doesn't get posted to the end of this month, then gets readjusted at the end of December. But as of right now, it's running at 1.5%.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, all those, okay, roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next, Member McCullough, to have the administration review school names with magnet in their title and determine if an appropriate designation, and if not, to consider replacing the word magnet with elementary or designation so recommended by the administration. The motion is referred to the administration. Member McCullough?
As it reads.
Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next is to review procedures around Know Your School nights to ensure maximum positive participation. Additionally, to consider transportation options via those transportation if it's logistically and financially feasible. In-house transportation, sorry.
As it
Member McCullough?
reads.
Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola.
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Member Mailman.
Yes.
Member McCullough.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. To provide a list of schools and grade levels to the pocket teachers and to discuss funding for additional staff if needed. Member Benenda?
Well, it is as listed, but some people might not know what pocket teachers are. So those are usually the teachers that we don't assign to classrooms when the school year starts, and we use them when we get large number of students. And, you know, as the superintendent and I were talking about on Monday, Worcester Public Schools did get 700 more students this year that weren't planned for. So there's got to be some additional classes that might need additional pocket teachers. So I was wondering if we get a list of the schools and the grade levels and have them now. And I know the issue is going to be funding for that. But those are some of the special supports and additional supports I was talking about earlier. If there's a way to get some extra pocket teachers, I know it's going to be a budget issue, but if we could just get a list of where they are now, and then it also may be a list as to where additional support might be needed. Thank you.
Thank you. What's that? Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola.
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Member Mailman.
Yes.
Member McCullough.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. To approve the revised report of the superintendent's schedule for 24-25 school year. Revisions are in red. I think we have a meeting scheduled on January 2nd, I thought.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, maybe we should eliminate that. So, or we can wait until December if you want. But what's that? I don't think we're in school that day, and people aren't going to be around. So you want to eliminate January 2nd? We can reschedule it as need be. Is that okay? So my motion is to amend it to eliminate the January 2nd meeting. And so we can pass this as amended.
But just clarification on that. So we're adding another date in January for that report?
Yeah, well, we can do that when we get closer in December and see. For what report?
The facilities report, planning priority. I'm looking at the schedule.
Oh, okay.
I understand you don't like the date, but are we going to pick another date in January?
Yeah, we can pick the 9th. The 9th. Is everybody else up for the 9th, looking over there and over here? I know people go away, so I was just trying to make sure. Okay, as amended, January 9th. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough.
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request that the administration survey all school sites for safety purposes while evaluating the number of crossing guards assigned to each school. Member Biancaria.
Thank you. This came up as I attend numerous neighborhood meetings, and one of the discussions that has centered many of the neighborhood meetings of their concern is that when they are dropping students off, picking students up, so we're looking at a time frame of beginning of school for about 30 minutes, end of school for about 30 minutes. We have crossing guards that are on particular streets, particular locations. While they're surveying, the possibilities are endless due to the fact that we have an increase in traffic. We also have an increase in automobiles throughout our city. And let's face it, we've had some instances where when we look at safety for our city, we have a city council that made a determination that we're going to be lowering our speed limit. And there's a reason for that. and we want to make sure that we are looking at what our school sites consist of, and we are just as smart as our city council in the fact that we have to make sure that we're safe with our purposes. I will bring out one of the sites on Belmont Street. We do have a bridge. Unfortunately, that bridge is really used, and it's been really used, I swear, from day one. So that being a state road, we really have to look at how we're going to make this safer. And continuously, if not every day, every other day, it's an almost, because the kids are coming across, the parents are coming across, and maybe the crossing guard isn't an additional crossing guard isn't the answer. However, it may help until we come up with some better alternatives, because it was one of the priorities in the neighborhood discussion for the east side, and the concern is that we don't want to wait until something happens. So that's just one of our schools. So I certainly would like to see this occur over the next few months, and then we can discuss it in January and February. So that's what I ask administration, is that we do this survey sooner than later, due to the fact that springtime arrives, and I would like to see some, if we have the possibility of whether it's additional crossing guards or other suggestions that arise from this, that we are able to have the discussion the end of winter, early spring, so we can have something done before school year ends. So we're not looking at saying we're going to do this for the September of 25, 26. We can get it done for spring of 25. I just don't want to wait on this. So I'm not asking right this evening to say by December 30th, this is what we need to do. But I'm hoping that I can persuade administration to look at this sooner than later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member McCullough?
Thank you. If Member Biancaria would be willing for a friendly amendment or add-on, I believe that there might be some of this going on with transportation and mobility right now, and I would ask if administration could tie in with the transportation and mobility, so for some of their work that's ongoing, to get that data back, the safety data as part of that.
That's fine, but isn't that through the city council versus the school administration?
I'm
correct?
saying in addition, like add on, like that the city, our administration work with transportation and mobility, because I think they're already doing some of those surveys, but I was just thinking, because it ties into the overall thing. If you're not comfortable with it, I'm fine. I
No,
was just thinking.
that's fine, they can tie it in, but I'm not quite sure if they're doing all the sites. Okay. That's the reason why I say that, but they certainly can work
She's only
together.
adding on, so your order would stand by itself, and that would be an add-on.
Sure, that's
Okay.
fine.
So roll call is amended. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. To consider moving the time of the October 24, 24 meeting to 4 p.m. Roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Yes.
Member Guardiola,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes, to pick an alternative delegate to represent the Worcester School Committee at the MCAS resolution meeting at the MASC Joint Conference in November. We already picked a delegate. Now we just in case, want to do an alternative delegate. Member Mailman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recommend Alex Guardiola to represent us as an alternate for the conference in November.
You want to be nominated? You accept the nomination, sir.
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Member Benenda?
Yes, I'd like to, I'm already going to the conference, so it wouldn't cost the district any extra money. So I'd like to also put my name in for alternate delegate.
Okay. Okay, Member Guardiola?
Mr. Mayor, I will be there as well. I've already signed up.
Are you going?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so okay. Yeah, okay, so the first motion is to, Alex Guardiola, roll call.
Member Alvarez, Member Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Benenda,
Oh, should we say the motion again?
The first motion is to have Alex Guardiola represent as the alternate.
Okay, I'll say no.
Okay.
Member Guardiola,
No.
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Member Mailman,
Yes.
Member McCullough,
Yes.
Member Roy,
yes,
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting, and, okay, I'm trying to remember. A lot of events going on this weekend, if people are interested, we have, anyways, motion to adjourn.